I'd like to introduce our first keynote speaker. We are so excited to have Miss Kim Wiley-Schwartz here with us. Yay! Kim is the Assistant Commissioner for Education and Outreach at New York City's Department of Transportation. I had the opportunity to meet her for the first time last night, and her energy is just so exciting, and I just couldn't be more thrilled that she's here with us. She's going to tell you much more about what she does. She'll do a much better job than I can at really introducing her, but we do know she's just made an absolute amazing difference in New York City. And she's really touched the lives of so many bicyclists and pedestrians, and working a lot with outreach and education with kids and low-income populations. So I'm so excited to have her here. And like I said, you'll do better than I can. So I'll pass it over to you.
Great, thank you. I'm going to use this mic so that, you can tell I don't need. So I worked for 10 years at the Metropolitan Opera. I did, literally. Is it working now? Yeah. Okay, great. I'm so pleased to be here in Tennessee. My family has a legend that I was almost born in Knoxville. My dad was stationed at Fort Knox. And within is Fort Knox here in Knoxville? No. Where is it? Was it Kentucky? Oh, well now, so my dad goes into this whole thing last night when I call him. He's like, you're almost from that area. And, and I was like, okay, no wonder I like it. But, there's some, you know how family legends are? They're just ridiculous. But like I said today to someone, I love bourbon and barbecue. And music. So even though it was raining like cats and dogs yesterday, I went for a very long walk, and I'm very excited to be here. So I'm a New England girl who moved to New York City 25 years ago to pursue my career in musical theater. After I was done with that, I became a teacher. I taught musical theater for 15 years in the New York City public schools, and then became very engaged with how the streets were around the children's places where I went. I temporarily moved to Indonesia for 3 years, where I learned that if you don't plan a city and you don't care about biking and walking, you will have a terrible, terrible outcome. And came home and switched my careers very quickly to become who I am now. This sounds crazy, but there is a chief educator for the city of New York when it comes to issues of biking, walking, safer streets, child passenger safety, not drinking and driving, and all that stuff, and that's me. So today I'm going to go through a bunch of things with the caveat that I'm not an engineer, that it is my job to explain what we're doing in New York City into lay people's terms. So those of you who are engineers and planners and people in here, please, code switch back into your engineering thinking. I'm going to go through this relatively quickly, use some pretty pictures to tell you what I'm talking about, but I'd like to make some time to make sure that we can have questions and answers. Okay? All right, so New York City. This is what you think of when you think of New York City. Moving cabs as fast as possible, or worse, this, right? Like, good luck getting across the street. Better run. It's like that. In fact, it was like that a long time ago. This is Times Square in the 50s. We just didn't make room for people. I mean, look at how many more people there are than cars there. But that wasn't what we were doing. We were moving to a modern city, making room for automobiles. And we were still doing that 10 years ago. This is a shot of Times Square after we at least stopped crisscrossing the traffic here so we uncoupled the bow tie, but other than that, we just had no interest in making room for people, and as you can see, there was no room for anyone. These people are not going to get safely across the street. About 8 years ago, Mayor Michael Bloomberg decided that he wanted to change how we thought about doing the streets, and he hired a wonderful person, my last commissioner, Jeanette Zadeh-Khan, and together they put together some real strategic goals to reduce fatalities and injuries, and now we have a Vision Zero policy as of January, and I will talk to you about that, to create programs that treat streets as public space. Right? This is our common area, and we need to treat it thusly. To increase the bicycle and commuting while decreasing the risks. That was the only way we were going to get away with that. And to involve communities in every element of that change. And I'm going to go through some of those ideas with you.
So what we realized, now that we've done our 7-year experiment, is that there are certain tenets that you really need to use. Now, I know that you guys are here thinking about pedestrians and bicyclists. It's also my job to think about general safety. So I really do think about how automobiles use the street to make safer streets for walking and biking. And I'd like to push you through some of those. So one of the things we realized is that if we just simply make the streets easier to use for all modes, it creates not just a safer environment, but a more encouraging, friendly environment. So, for example, here in Queens, now I'm going to take you through a lot of neighborhoods you probably have never seen on TV. I'm going to assume the same way that the Nashville I see on TV is not accurate. I would like you to know that the New York City you see on TV is not accurate. We are a string of neighborhoods and communities with 8.4 million people in them from I think every language is spoken in New York City. So, you know, when we talk about fixing the streets of New York, we're very proud of the work we do at Times Square, but these are really the places that matter. So this is Casino Boulevard in Queens, and we had a very high pedestrian fatality rate for seniors, which we do in general. So what we started to do is try to figure out how can we organize the street using either paint or our sidewalk crew. That's it. No having to change anything, no drainage, no anything. Just pull our sidewalk crew in, make some refuges out of paint or concrete. So on Casino Boulevard, we simply put in a median with bollards, and this has created a huge reduction in traffic injuries, but more importantly, it's simply easier to use. It's easier to see where to turn, where to stand, and how to cross. Here's a place right near a school. As you can see, that car is literally trying to squeeze behind this mother and her child. There's just no rhyme or reason to this. So this is the same location. So just concentrate on that back building. Same location. All we've done here is simply put a median or in the middle, sort of a small plaza with a planting area, and created a one-way street and eliminated that turn so that people weren't coming around the corner anymore, taking out the mothers. Which is really what happens. So here's Harlem. Heart of Harlem is out on Clay Powell Boulevard, one of the famous boulevards in New York City. And here we were constantly having a problem. We can put these gridlock Sam, don't block the box grid marks, but that's really not what's troubling us here. We have a sharp left-hand turn here. The pedestrians that are in the crosswalk on the other side were getting hit by vehicles, but there was also not enough place to cross and not enough place to stop if you didn't make the light. So we simply eliminate the left-hand turn, reorganizing the street, asking people to make a series of right-hand turns if they need to make a left, and make this area, again, this kind of signature treatment we use. It's just our sidewalk crew, making area for plantings, putting a couple of bollards in, and we have a much more organized place. Here again, this is in the Bronx. Nobody has any idea where to cross or what to do, right? It's not safe. So again, we simply put a nice planted median in the middle, and everybody it's more clear who walks, who drives, and where to go. Or here, where we had this Class 3 bike lane striped, kind of useless. We reorganize by eliminating the southbound lane and create a biking lane. And it's just, I know there are sharrows there, which in my opinion aren't that useful. But we have this bike lane, curbside bike lane painted green, just to reorganize the traffic. Or here in a park where we know that people just simply want to cross, we make sure that cars understand this is where people will be crossing and they have the right to that space. Now, this is a famous place. This is where the Pulaski Bridge comes, separates Queens and Brooklyn. And it is a mighty intersection. There's a lot going on there. And in fact, there are so many schools there. I'll show you in my next shot how many crossing guards it takes to get kids across. So what we needed to do was just simply reorganize, but we don't have the money, right, to completely rip up the place and re-engineer everything. So what we do is we use paint, some medians, and some more delineated turn lines just to organize the street, to make everybody understand where they need to be. And if you look here, in the corner, that's how many crossing guards I need in the morning to get the kids across safely, for real. And that's after we've done this. So again, let me just explain to you why this matters. So what we're just simply trying to do is delineate the space and make it easier to use. So obviously, we highlight the crosswalks. We make them solid and people really understand where they need to go. We extend the medians so that people have more resting area, but more importantly, it organizes the traffic. And as you can see, a lot of the median work we did there is simply in paint. And then we delay the turns. In New York City, one of the leading causes of pedestrian fatality is failure to yield on left-hand turns. So on two-way arterials, people are making the left-hand turn. The pedestrians think that they have the walk. They're in the middle of the crosswalk with the light when someone comes around and takes them out in the crosswalk. So this is delayed turns is really a big part of what we do to make walking safer. And then this lane delineation so that people really understand where they were supposed to turn. And then we also believe very strongly in, if it's dangerous, remove the danger. So in Times Square, Broadway was creating a lot of issues, a lot of conflicts. You know, Broadway's not a natural street on the grid. It really creates lots of problems. So I don't know how many of you have been to Times Square since we've done this, but we closed the street to traffic and we opened it to pedestrians. And that's not a photo simulation, that's real. So that is what Times Square now looks like on Broadway. The entire length of Broadway is closed to traffic and open to pedestrians. I'll show you that again because it's really good. So that's our work there. And in Times Square, it's important to know, not only have we had it's like a 60% reduction in crashes for all users, including cyclists, although we do ask cyclists to walk through this plaza, to dismount and walk through the plaza. We haven't really been able to figure out how to have a safe bike lane. The bike lane is on Broadway. But we've also seen an 82% jump in retail sales and retail rents. So this has been like an intensely successful thing. So then, the other thing we know is we have to create safety in numbers, right? And you guys know this, you have a lot of cyclists in this room. You know, a bike by yourself just isn't seen. A lot of bikes together, everybody's looking for you. So this is a big part of how we've re-engineered or reorganized. And in a lot of cases, what that also means is creating separated bike lanes. Which we do here, as you can see, by changing where we park our cars, moving them, and using very simple things like flexible delineators, which is fancy talk for these ugly plasticky things, that just simply create a safer space for bikes. How many of you have actually gone to New York City or seen this yourself? Okay, so some of you have gotten a chance to do that. So on the, I guess, left-hand side of your screen, those are actually all parked vehicles. And then again, our sidewalk crew simply goes in and puts in an extra bit of sidewalk here that pops out and creates the delineation. And then we do have our mixing zones where people are making left-hand turns. And those are a little bit more complicated. And in these places, what we know is that, for example, on 9th Avenue, crashes of all kinds are down 56%. That means all kinds of people, vehicle on vehicle, as well as vehicle on bike, as well as pedestrian, everybody wins. And our bicycle volumes at this time, when we took these numbers, were up by 69%, but that was before we had bike share. Again, here's on Broadway, and this is Broadway at, I want to say 33rd Street, so they're deep in the heart of Herald Square, right here. And our cycle volumes are up 50%. Our crashes always go down for all users wherever we put a separated bike lane. And that's something I want you to really think about. Here, this is our famous Prospect Park West bike lane. For those of you who may pay attention to these things, this has been in litigation since we put it in for almost 4 years now. And they're still litigating, trying to take out the bike lane, which is really amazing because we've had such a significant, you know, the volumes are also, you'll see this child, this is where I bike with my children. That Prospect Park is a famous place for sports. So we all bike up and down. Now we never would have done that in Prospect Park because the speeding was so bad. We've actually reduced this speed limit to 25 miles an hour recently on the street, because even with this separated bike lane and moving the cars out and going down to 2 lanes, people are still speeding at the gateway to a park full of children. And I just wanted you to take a look at this. This is First Avenue. And First Avenue is a little less tame. As you can see, the bike lane on the left-hand side of the screen is a little bit more naked. I actually really like to ride here. You can see up there's the mixing zone, so cars come in, but they know to look for bikes. And we have a buses-only lane. And we have safer spaces for pedestrians to stand. So this is a really big part of it, is creating safety in numbers so people can, you know where the pedestrians are, you know where the bicyclists are, you know where the vehicles will be traveling, you know to expect buses, and all of that makes things work just a little bit better. And then enter City Bike. And City Bike has really changed things for us. We have about 6,000 bicycles. It has been incredibly popular. And at this point, we have trouble with our commuting numbers now because we take our commuting numbers as people enter and exit Manhattan over the bridges. Now there's only one spot on the other side of Manhattan, and that's downtown Brooklyn that has City Bike right now, and up into Williamsburg. But not that many trips get taken over bridges because that thing is 40 pounds. So I do it with 3 gears. It's really not fun to go over the Brooklyn Bridge on that thing. I do it. But so we have so many more trips being made in Manhattan proper. So with City Bike, that safety in numbers thing is just, it's off the hook. So then they're bright and they're blue and they flash, just like your V-cycles here. You can really see them. Saw people riding them in the rain last night. Couldn't miss them. So it has really created a lot. Now the most important thing, if you're going to take on this kind of stuff, is safety. This conversation has to be a conversation about safety, nothing else. Save people's lives, make bicycles safer, make pedestrians safer, make drivers safer. That is what you need to do. Because in the case of Prospect Park West Bike Lane, the conversation is about safety. So every time this goes back into the courts, the judge says, I don't understand. I can't take this out. If there's a 40% reduction in crashes, and I'm responsible for removing this bike lane, then I am for 40% more people getting hurt. And I can't do that. And that's really what you need to look at when you look, I know this is very urban, but when you look at these urban redesigns, the conversation has to be about safety, first and foremost. Because when you see those changes, and you have those numbers locked in, they become permanent. So again, try to make the invisible visible. Now, I was on Broadway last night, Broadway and 3rd, and you have that feeling where, can anyone see me? Can anyone see me in this configuration here? I just wasn't sure, and I even had the hand, and I thought, oh, I'm not sure anyone can see me right now, because it's not that clearly delineated, with all due respect to the people who oversee Broadway. But it's sometimes you really need to feel very visible. And here's a perfect example. I tried to find something that really reminded me of that. That's just First Avenue. Big old, good luck right across the street, and let's stick those bicycles there. Good luck on your bike, right? And it felt very, and this is even a school zone, which is my purview. It makes me crazy that we didn't fix this with all these children trying to get to school. And so this is a very simple redesign. Okay, this is paint. This is the same location. Paint. And again, that signature, put the bike lane to the curbside, protect it with a little bit of sidewalk, a little bit of median, and use cars as a buffer. So those cars on that side, they're not traveling. That's not a travel lane, that's a parking lane. So we create a buffer between people and bikes and cars with parked cars. And as you can see, let's go back, these guys, for example, don't have to do that anymore. But more importantly, this person who's crossing the street has a safe space to wait. She can cross the bike lane at her leisure, wait for the hand, and then make her move. Does everybody see how that works? That's just making yourself visible. Again, through this crosswalking, through these extended medians, through this lane delineation, all of that stuff just makes it simpler. And then we have this thing to choose quality over quantity. So, which makes the traffic engineers at New York City DOT always very nervous, right? It's like, we need a higher quality throughput that includes pedestrians and bicyclists, and often means lane reductions in order to have things work better. So, for example, on 4th Avenue in Brooklyn, where we have, I think I have 15 schools along the corridor, 3 senior centers. We had incredibly high crashes, and we had had 6 people killed along the corridor in 3 years. That's not acceptable. So we finally got a chance to take a look at it. You can see there are 3 moving lanes here. 3 moving lanes, and you can see that this woman standing in the middle with this cop, where this cop car is making an aggressive turn. You know, she has no place to be. People stand out because they can't be seen. They're coming off the subway. So all we did here, this is a photo sim, because I felt like it was clearer, but this is an actual, we've actually done this. But I wanted to use the before and after with the same humans in the shot. We have gone down to 2 lanes. Made that parking lane wider, which is a double secret bike lane, if you can see that. So you can tuck in to that parking lane, and you have to be really careful of the door zone. But you could get your bicycle down there, and this gives everybody a place to rest, but more importantly, that organizes. So again, at 51st Street, I'll show you the same thing. If you look at the top, do you see that tiny, tiny little 18-inch piece of concrete we gave somebody to stand on? They got caught in the lane. So we simply have painted out those medians and bought back that space by one lane reduction. Now this has been in place now for, gosh, 1.5 years, 18 months, and everybody reports that it's working better. The double parking isn't the same. The turns are more organized. But more importantly, we've had no one killed along this corridor in 18 months, and no one severely injured, which really matters to me, because the last 3 people who were severely injured were 3 children crossing on their way to school with their dad. So, you know, that we really see this. So that's a, like, quality over quantity thing. But the other thing we like to do is, like, is that necessary, that little extra strip right there? I mean, do we really need to have cars be able to make both of those turns there? Or can we make it into a plaza? Could we put up some barrels, throw down some epoxy gravel, and have that be a space? And so this is an actual, this was actually the day we put this in. And the thing that's always amazing to us is we put something in and everybody comes. Because people are dying for extra space, right? I mean, they're just dying. We throw down some planters, put up the epoxy gravel, throw in those fur mob. You know, I feel like we're personally responsible for the French company who makes those cute little things being in business. And there it is. Now, there are some things, you know, the bus route had to change. People needed to do certain things. And there is one citizen who hates this so much, he keeps posting these YouTube videos called, like, Plaza, the Disaster. You know, you can find them. Please do. There's a 25-minute one. Plaza. But as you can see, this is hugely popular. Or do we really need that parking lot? No, I don't think so. Let's just paint it. So once again, parking lot, painted. This is actually the first plaza project we did 6 years ago at DOT. And it's simple. It's just literally paint. And sometimes you'll see these kind of big blocks. They just come from, they're leftover stock from our bridge unit. Because when you're in charge of the Brooklyn Bridge, you like collect those things. Here's the north side of Union Square, famously difficult place. Plus, we actually have a contraflow bike lane that goes there, and that's completely confusing to everybody. So again, we just took back a lot of that space, made the contraflow bike lane really apparent, gave room to pedestrians, and there you have. Oh, I don't know what that question mark is there. Summer Streets? Must be which. So the other thing is, do we really need to always use the streets for cars? So Summer Streets, we closed Park Avenue from 72nd Street all the way down to the Brooklyn Bridge 3 Saturdays in August from 7 o'clock in the morning to 1 o'clock in the afternoon. That's all we could get the police department to give us. And here you are, people in the middle, walking and biking in the middle of Park Avenue. This can be done anywhere. You just simply need to close the street, or as we like to say, open the street to people. And it's a great thing. I mean, you can see people bring their children out. I mean, this is like, you would never normally have a kid with that ability and that age in the middle of Park Avenue on a bicycle. So it's an amazing thing. And it's just an asset. You can just use your streets to do fun things on in limited capacities. And then we get to looking beyond the immediate problem, which is really my job, which is sort of how do we also educate people, not just what we're doing, but how can we make the streets safer. And the culture in New York City is a little bit, you know, everybody needs to get there as fast as possible. I've never met more modal prejudice in my life. I mean, you'll talk to a pedestrian, they're like, those cars are bicyclists. And you talk to a bicycle, and they say, those pedestrians, cars, you know, and everybody. And then you'll have a friend who does all three in a day, and they've been mad at the other two modes every time they were, right? Everybody's wrong, you know. And so it's my job to educate people. And under Vision Zero, which is our new mandate, how many of you guys have read or heard about Vision Zero? So I really recommend that you take a look at it. It's a pretty shocking piece of policy. So our new mayor came in from the great work of some people like the Streets PAC group, who were a political group that said we need safer streets. They convinced Mayor de Blasio before he came in to take on safer streets, but Vision Zero. And he has a zero traffic fatalities mandate in 10 years. For real. Now, we do really well in New York City. Last year, we had 280 people out of 8.4 million people killed. 16 of those were children. And so for us, all of those fatalities are unacceptable. But, you know, a statistician would say that was statistical and not like they didn't even exist, right? Because I work with obviously mothers and fathers who have lost their children. That's not the case for me. I don't mean to sound weird. I'm just saying that for us, getting to zero is a possibility. So we have to try to figure out, and I'm sorry this is cut off, kind of how to get people thinking differently. And in New York City, I have literally 1 second of people's attention, which is where the Look campaign comes from. I literally just, all of my work is one word. Look. Whether this is for a pedestrian as she is about to cross into a bike lane, just look. But we also do this with drivers. Look. Look before you turn. Or in the inside of every single cab, look for cyclists before you open your door. Right? Or in this case, I'll put out speed boards in a neighborhood asking people to slow down. This is our skeleton speed board. Previously, it had the full pedestrian and it said speed limit 30. When the person goes too fast, it turns into a skeleton and says slow down. These work pretty well. You'd be surprised. Or here, this is our That's Why It's 30 campaign, which this is affectionately, she's called Skull Girl. And these are numbers that a lot of New Yorkers now have really been able to understand. If you go 30 miles an hour and you hit someone, you're not going to kill them. If you're going 40, you will. And right now, we're in a fight to try to get down to 25 or 20 miles an hour as our city speed limit, but we need Albany to tell us whether or not that's okay. And then I've started really incorporating loss, working with families who have lost their children, husbands who lost their wives. This is a picture of an amazing advocate whose name is Audrey Anderson, literally standing in the spot where her son was killed on his bicycle and talking about it. She's been an amazing force for change, as have all of the Families for Safe Streets, which are people who have been able to get the attention of New Yorkers and say, slow down. The Vision Zero work that we've been doing has been pretty amazing. This is my collaboration with the police department. This is what they are now mandated to hand out to people. Simple ideas in safety education. Instead of saying, wait for a fresh box, go look left, right, left again, and then hold your hand up if there's a big checker. We're just simply telling people that pedestrians that they can't be seen in cars to watch out for them. And with bicyclists, that really, it is really trucks that are their worst enemy. And then I can't encourage you enough to these children. And when I say use, I mean work with children. Children see what's going on. They're extremely vulnerable. They have caregivers who care about them. They have schools that are part of the community. Here we are on Atlantic Avenue. That's Commissioner Sadiq Khan with my speed gun, which I'm not allowed to call it in America. In the schools, we call them a radar detector. And here the kids are, they're holding a press conference and clocking drivers at 50, 52, 55 miles an hour on a 30-mile-an-hour zone right outside their school. This is extremely effective, and anytime you can get kids out there, here are kids studying the science of speed using the radar detector again. It's just a huge way of connecting to families. And to me, schools, I have 1,700 public schools, 1.4 million school children. And those people there, they are the driving force for the changes in New York City streets. You know, we're not putting in a bike lane without going to the schools around and talking about what the streets look like. Talking to kids, having them clock the speeding, look at how the streets can be safer. And then they make the plea to their PTA, then they go to the community board, they ask their council members to come in, and usually it's the kids, especially middle and high school kids, who make the presentations for separated bike lanes, for changes to the streets. They're the ones who say that we need a plaza here. It's just, they're the best people to use. And if you have a chance, we have a very healthy Facebook page and Twitter feed, so you can really keep up with us. And you can also see all of our work on YouTube. We have some amazing filmmakers who will really give you a chance to take a look at that. So that's the end of my formal presentation, but I'd love to take some questions. I'm hopeful we have plenty of time. Yes?
It looks like your presentation was taking more roadways away from vehicles. Did you get a lot of pushback from vehicles?
Well, you know, yes.
Their representation?
Absolutely. I mean, I think when we first started doing this 6 years ago, there was a bit of a lunatics are running the asylum feel. The pedestrian plazas were very mysterious to people, and bike lanes were, why would we do that? Nobody uses that. And I think the press really did not take to it kindly, and that fueled some, you know, we have an issue in New York City, right? We have we're as suburban as we are deeply urban. So the suburban constituents really hold on to the use of their vehicle, which is funny because they're never going to drive into downtown with their cars. I mean, that would be insane. It would cost $50 to store your car for 4 hours. So, but I think that there was a misunderstanding that this was it. If they take Times Square away from drivers, they're going to take my car away from me out in Cambria Heights, Queens, you know, literally 30 miles away. So I think it took a long time. And initially, when we first started doing this work, we thought Mayor Bloomberg was going to be gone in 2 years, right? He was done with his term. So there was like a rush to get it in and see how much we could get done, and then suddenly he had 4 more years. And it was through those 4 years, I think we were able to really even things out. And that's why I'm saying the safety issue. You do take space away from vehicles, but you also organize it better. There's a lot of places where the traffic actually flows better. Like in Times Square, for example, and we know this because we take GPS for taxis. So we know that taxis actually go more efficiently through Times Square because they only have 7th Avenue to go down, rather than when Broadway and 7th were crossing all the time and they were sharing the light cycle. So, but it takes a while to do that. So you have to have a lot of political will, and you have to have some examples that work. And so you have to throw that in and hope for the best, because you know it's going to work, and hopefully let that go. In the back.
Yes, you mentioned Streets Pack, and I heard a presentation at the National Bike Summit. Would you talk a little bit more about what they did?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So again, in the winter of our discontent, which was 2010 to 2011, when we put in Prospect Park West bike lane, and then we had this horrible winter full of snow. And then one of the most outrageously sexist cover pieces in the New York Times about our Commissioner Jeanette Sadik-Khan, that she wasn't nice to people. I don't know. Does anybody worry about whether or not Rahm Emanuel is nice to people? You know what I mean? Whatever. And so this like all came together. Then we call this our bike lash winter, where we weren't sure. Simultaneously, our commissioner is going around trying to get major banks and corporations to sponsor bike sharing. Hey, what do you say? Put your name on all these bikes, right? It was a crazy time. And at that time, we really weren't sure it was going to last. And out of that time came a group of advocates who had lots of different things at stake, but they all agreed that safer streets were the most important thing. And they began to put together their political power. And they realized, as they started getting towards that last year of Bloomberg Sadik-Khan, that unless they created power and created literally a political action committee, this was not going to have a seat at the table. And so it's a group of people from all boroughs, including Staten Island, which is like a New Jersey suburb, and where many people actually own 2 vehicles. In Manhattan, only 25% of households even own a vehicle, right? So that'll kind of give you the change. And together, they put down an agenda, and they put their stamp of approval on every council member. They only would get council members who would say that they would keep bike lanes, love pedestrian plazas, be for safer streets. And they used their political capital to move through and found a candidate in Mayor de Blasio and told him that he was going to have a Vision Zero mandate. And that has panned out. And even now, I noticed like budgetary things for myself. I was given a budget. My budget was then cut. And then I got it back. The streets found out that I lost my budget. Right? And I needed that for safer streets. So it's a really effective action committee. I think it's important. There are men, there are women, there are young people, there are old people, there are people that represent all different walks of life. And there are some cyclists, but there are like lots of multimodal folks. And there are drivers who want safer streets for driving. So that really works. Yeah.
Thank you, Kim. That was great. Naked streets. You seem to be the antithesis of the naked streets policy of slowing everybody down by having chaos and removing street clutter.
I hear in your accent that might be something that's going on where you're from.
Maybe. Can you talk to me about your attitude towards naked streets, given what you've just shown us?
Well, sure. I mean, look, I'm from a small town in the Berkshires in Massachusetts where we don't have a traffic light. And I really understand that one of the reasons why there's never been a horrible automobile crash in my town center is because nobody knows what to do. Right? So everybody has to stop. Whose turn is it? And I see that as being really important. And actually, one of the things we've done is we've stripped the streets of signage. I probably didn't even talk about that. Everybody was like, more 30-mile-an-hour signs. And nobody can see them. I mean, our streets are so cluttered. So there is a piece where sort of pulling down some of the MUTCD and stuff like that, trying to get it less cluttered is one thing. But I think in New York City, it's an organizational principle. I just don't think we have, we're just too densely packed to kind of see what happens if we all just kind of, we don't have it organized. So for us, that's what we've learned, is organizing and making things visible. I would like to be in a place where we could just let it all roll. But even in New York City, I mean, our children, one of the places they're the most likely to be injured is at unsignalized or stop sign controlled intersections, because New York City drivers just cannot be trusted. So they just roll through, and kids have been told drivers are going to stop. And so I've been doing a lot of work trying to help kids understand that they can't trust drivers. So I do need some chaos. Was that an okay? I don't know. I don't know if I answered your question, but that's where I'm at.
Great, thank you.
Yes.
Going from the same thing, when you go from a small town to one that's trying to organize, and going from taking those streets that have no signs to ones that have signs, and taking the drivers that have no idea what to do, and putting those signs in, do you have some suggestions, or do you have some idea, or even later someone else has some idea how to organize these things to make it easier for cyclists, and this, where I'm from, they're putting in a circle, for instance, and no one is going to know what to do with this, to be honest with you.
But the good news is in a circle, they're much less likely to actually crash into each other because of the science there, right? So really, the illogical thing, and I've been working with people in Sweden really closely, right, because they invented Vision Zero. You know, this has the most likelihood to create a crash. Where if we all have to come in and around, it might, I mean, we might crash into each other, but those crashes won't be severe, because it's those T-bones and those head-ons that create the biggest things. So, no, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think it's just that it's a cultural, how can I say this? I mean, I think the reason why walking and biking is so essential, and this multimodal attitude is so essential everywhere, is so that cars find their rightful place in the ecology of the streets. And I think only then can we know that cyclists will be more protected. But that's a cultural shift. But I do think you can do it with streets, cues in the street. And even as, I mean, a simple share the road sign, I think goes a long way. So that would be me. But we don't put share the road signs in New York City. Because you never see them. Yes?
It appears to me that your bike lanes are two-way lanes, and they're on one side of the street, as opposed to one lane going this way on this side, and another lane going the other
Oh,
way.
let's take a look at that. Actually, that's too much of a generalization.
Okay.
So on a one-way avenue in New York City, that bike lane will be, one way. So here, that's going to be a one-way on a one-way street. The other one, no, you can't, because it's a one-way system. But what you're looking at here, this is two-way. This is Prospect Park West. Now that's different because we need an eastbound route outside the park. But because of the nature of the situation, people are looking for that. But we really normally people won't look for people on bikes going the wrong way. So we really have to be careful. And I did show you that contrast.
So you do have them both ways, basically. Some with one way on one.
Right, so that would be a pair. First and Second Avenue, pairs north and south. Ninth and 8th, pair north and south.
And how wide are they? 6 feet.
I don't know. 12 feet maybe on the one way, but the two way is, I think it's 16. I'm not sure, honestly. I wish I knew the answer to that. Yes?
Have you done any education? I know you do a lot of education in general, obviously, with schools and different things like that. Have you done education with drivers in doing times, like, because it's, like New York is, everyone's in a rush, right? So every driver, or it doesn't matter who you are, bicyclist, walker, whatever, everyone's in a rush, everyone's in a hurry to get where they need to go.
Right.
So has there been an education system of saying, hey, when you're driving through New York, like, listen, just because we put the reduced lane, just because we narrowed it from 3 to 2, or just because we put this median in, or just because this, guess what? Your ride time is not going to be any reduced any less. Have you done educational or informative things like that to inform, so that drivers aren't perceiving that you're taking away something,
right,
and that you're saying, listen, like, this is going to create you more efficiently, and it's actually going to get you to work. If you do
right,
slow down, if you do, it's not going to affect your thing.
Right.
At least think, oh, if we slow down, if we stop this, if we reduce that, the driver's saying, well, then I can't get to work on time. I can't.
You're still going to get to that red signal, right?
Yeah, right.
So yes, right now we are doing 2 educational things. We've created what we call arterial slow zones. So big, mean streets are now 25 miles an hour. They have aggressive signage. I put speed boards up all over the place, coming to 25, and now we've signalized the time so that between 22 and 24 miles an hour actually catches the green wave, the fictional green wave. But it exists. So we've slowed that timing down, because one of the things we are trying to do is to show drivers if they go faster, they're just going to sit at the light. I mean, and it is true. The other thing, and I'll tell you this, is my biggest education right now is enforcement. So right now, I've never had this before, the police are on board, Bratton has told everybody. We just had a blitz failure to yield yesterday, today, and tomorrow, which means, normally where cars just go, literally there are cops, plainclothes cops, and people are getting failure to yield tickets, and they're also getting tickets if they push through the yellow and they get to the next red. That has never happened before that I know of. So we're also using enforcement as a pretty hot education tool right now, but it's being supported through a very large education campaign that's called Choices. And Choices is the choices you make behind the wheel matter. And that is right now in Yankee Stadium, Met Stadium, during those games, the Nets, I saw it last night, in all of these places where I'm finding my audience, which is, I'm sad to say, still 21 to 39-year-old males. Not to say that only men go to the games, but that's a really good attention grabber. So it's that combination, but there's always going to be, look, I can't engineer for jerks, and I can't educate for jerks. Sure. And I unfortunately was quoted saying that in the New York Times yesterday. Really, I was. I think I said stupidity. But, you can't engineer out, I'm a jerk. And that's why we've been working with the man who created the broken windows theory. And, there are criminal acts that get done in cars. And a lot of the people who are killing people are criminals in their cars. And the question is, can we figure out how to catch those guys before they hurt somebody? Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
I think it's just, can you imagine being the chief educator for New Yorkers?
Right.
I don't sleep that well.
Right. Yeah, I just thought, I was just wondering if it was like a positive slam, because the whole negative, you take away, stuff like that, it kind of backlashes at certain things, but you can empower people.
Yeah.
You can really support them if you say, listen,
Totally.
like this is a positive thing, and it's not only good for cyclists and you, but I'm going to show how it's good for you as a driver.
But it is, and I'm hopeful that the arterial slow zones are really going to pay off that way. I know 4th Avenue is paid off that way. Yes?
To go along with his discussion, something that Nashville does is on the interstates, we have these big signs that say it takes this amount of time to get to where you're going. And I think something along the lines of what he was saying is, could there be signs that say, hey, 10 years ago it took this amount of time to get through this section. Today it takes this amount of time. And so they can see that the amount of time that they're traveling has been cut down, even though the lanes have been cut down as well. So
That's
it's a positive spin.
New York wouldn't read that many words, but there may be a way.
You can
there
say,
used to be. They're like, oh, I can't even deal. But yes, I understand what you're saying, and it would be interesting to be able to.
and it could be as simple as 2004, 30 minutes, 2014, 8 minutes,
Right.
whatever,
Right.
so that it's just a bit like, whoa, it really has been cut down.
Right.
I don't have to be angry
It's a
anymore.
good idea. Thank you.
He gets the
Yes.
credit.
Two questions. My first question is, I was there about 6 months ago on a Sunday, and the traffic guides, they seem to be staff employed to help guide traffic. And I was curious to know if that is something that is typical, that you have staff on the roads and helping make sure that everybody's working with flow.
So you'll just have to tell me, where did you see them?
Down on the southeast side?
Near the World Trade Center?
Yes.
So you may be talking about pedestrian. Were they helping pedestrians or helping drivers?
Mostly helping pedestrians.
Okay. So in New York City, we have the dreaded TEAs, traffic enforcement agents, who are at every corner trying to move traffic quickly. They are my nightmare because they're like, you can go, and there's a pedestrian right there. I carry a badge, so I'm usually like, what? Why did you let that person go? And they get out their badge. And we have a fight. My poor children. So the TEAs are regularly there. They're at hot spots where we really need help actually trying to get cars from running reds, but they often do that. There is a program near the World Trade Center where, because there are so many pedestrians, they use a plastic chain. Is this what you saw? Yeah, you saw Sam Schwartz's people. They use a plastic chain and they run it across the crosswalk while the traffic goes. And they hold pedestrians back. And then when the light changes, they run back like this and they let everybody walk. And it's because along Church Avenue, there was so much, I mean, literally there are so many pedestrians that if they had the right of way the entire time, no traffic would ever flow through there. And I don't know why we didn't just give up and close the street, but you know, that's what's been happening. But that's not a Department of Transportation thing, that's the World Trade Center folks who are trying to get some control over that. I have really mixed feelings about it for a lot of reasons. But it has, I just don't want anyone to get hit by a car. So whatever that takes, because it's ugly. Yes?
So I just have one quick question about, you said that the plazas are really successful because people are just dying for extra space. But then you talked about how New York is also so suburban. I feel like that's a real pressure in terms of Nashville. So can you talk about who's using those plazas? Are people coming into the city to then explore these open plazas? Or is it people who already live there that now can stretch out more?
Well, I'm happy to talk about the Plaza program. I'm attached to the Plaza program by marriage. My husband was the Assistant Commissioner for Public Space at the New York City Department of Transportation for 6-7 years. He now works for Michael Bloomberg. So I know a lot about this. So actually, we have 65 plazas, and many of them are not in the center of the city. Many of them are in Corona, Queens, or out at the end, New Lots in the heart of East New York. They are in parts of the Bronx, which are not suburban, but they're like I don't know how much you know about the work DPZ, they're trans act violations. They're like, it should be safer and nicer and less car dependent, but they're very car dependent, and there's lots of people there, and they should be able to walk better. And those are really where we see our most successful plazas. The one I showed you was at Pitkin Avenue in Brooklyn, where we put out the barrels. So, they're suburban, but nobody has space. You understand? It's like you might have a driveway, but you don't have a place to sit, which is also why we have a benches program all over the city. So once you're out on the sidewalks, you need a place to congregate and sit. And our most successful plazas are in places like that, where people have small houses, maybe a little yard, but they really have no place to congregate and gather, and the streets are really still very mean. And we find it's in these more underserved communities where people are dying for space, and they're also frequently immigrant communities where people have come from places where they have lots of outdoor space to play dominoes together, to hang out, to play music, and we plop one of these things in the middle of Corona, Queens, and it's just unbelievable. I was in 2 weekends ago doing some outreach work in a place they call Diversity Plaza, which is literally where the Bengali, Indian Hindu, and Pakistani Muslim community all come together in this one, literally, transect, and we put a plaza there. And so all my materials had to be in every language, and work with everybody there, but that's what we're starting to see, is that people will come together in large communities. You cannot undervalue taking away a little tiny bit of space from vehicles and re-putting it for pedestrian plazas. It is huge walk encouragement. One more question. Oh, you choose. How can I choose?
Well, your hand's up.
Okay, just back in the 9/11 area.
Yeah.
Can you share a little bit about that project that is probably, that has every mode of transportation possible on West Street for about a mile or two? And what went into putting that kind of vision together?
Yeah, I mean, so West Street doesn't actually belong to us. It's state DOT. And one of the things I find fascinating is the area right all around the 9/11 memorial is actually literally top secret. So my colleagues who work on trying to redesign all that stuff, I'm not allowed to know what's happening. That's true, which has been fascinating. I just pedestrianized the whole damn place, so I don't know what their problem is, but who knows what's going on. That would be me. We find that whole, Lower Manhattan, where we all work, that's where the Department of Transportation's nexus is, so that we can keep our eye on the Staten Island Ferry, which we own and operate. We're down there, and, places like FedEx, they've stopped driving in there. Do you know this? They have boxes and bicycles. And people will put the packages in, and someone either on foot or on a bicycle will take them into downtown to make the deliveries. It's just a crazy place for cars. It's so densely packed with pedestrians. But on West Street, I think where you're talking about where we put the bike lane, it's a greenway. It's, organizing that, a lot has gone into that. And again, it's just safety first. But we do need to move lots of vehicles there. So, what is your question exactly? I think there's, I think the most interesting thing is I could see it becoming fully pedestrianized, because the truth is also that's safer when you're looking at terrorism. Like literally. When we had that person try to blow up Times Square with a vehicle, my husband woke up in the morning and said, maybe I could actually just get rid of cars in the whole Times Square. Like maybe they'll let me do it now, because it's a terrorist threat.
I guess my point was, it did take the opportunity of that tragedy to
Right.
make an incredible bikeway.
No, it's true. And the bikeway is amazing, and it's some of the few places where we've really been able to organize pedestrian crossing. And it does look amazing, I will be surprised if it's not entirely pedestrianized around the location, ultimately. But that will be top secret.
Okay.
Oh, I turned my mic off. Okay, hold on. I'll be hanging out. I'm hanging out. So I'll be here till tomorrow afternoon, because I figured I'd want to talk to you guys and learn stuff from you. But please feel free to talk to me.
Thank you so much. I just have so enjoyed all this so far. Another big round of applause, please.